One of the beautiful things about the First Amendment is its simplicity and its clarity. Congress shall make no law, very clear, and Congress shall make no law abridging freedom of speech or of the press. Now, the former Supreme Court Justice Hugo Black used to say that those words mean exactly what they say. Not that Congress can make some laws, but Congress shall make no law, and no law means no law. Now, there's a University of Miami Law School professor named Marianne, and she's published an article in the Boston Globe. It's actually based upon a new book of hers, and the book itself is sort of a revealing title. It's called The Cult of the Constitution. So you get an idea that here's a person who doesn't really like the Constitution. She thinks the Constitution is a sort of cult. And she wants to basically abolish the First Amendment. When I say abolish, she essentially wants to rewrite it. She calls it a redo. She wants to redo. Now, she wants to redo the Second Amendment, but I want to focus here on what she says about the First. Let's take a look at her redo, so-called. She basically says that she wants to, I'm going to read her revised version. Every person has the right to freedom of expression, association, peaceful assembly, and petition of the government for redress of grievances, consistent with the rights of others to the same and subject to responsibility for abuses. So this is a modified First Amendment. Modified, she says, in order to move it away from the concept of individual rights and toward the concept of the general welfare or, in her view, collective justice, social equality. Now, the first thing to say is that all the rights in our Constitution are individual rights. There are no collective rights in the Constitution at all. And this is no less true of the First Amendment. It's true of the Second Amendment. You have an individual right to own a gun. The Fourth Amendment, you have an individual right against unreasonable searches, an individual right to freedom of assembly, an individual right to due process of law, the Fifth Amendment. Or you keep going. The 14th Amendment, equal rights under the law, is not a collective right. It means that you as an individual have an equal right to be treated the same as somebody else in a similar situation by the law. The law should be, in a sense, neutral among individuals. And even though the law might say you can't discriminate based upon race, there are no collective rights that one race gets to assert against another. The Constitution itself frames all rights in terms of individual rights. But clearly, there's an intellectual movement in progressivism to diminish the concept of individual rights and to try to suppress them in the name of some collective vision. This is the premise of critical race theory. But what's interesting, I think, here is it's migrating to the rewriting of the Constitution itself. In other words, we've seen in many areas, we've seen corporate censorship, we've seen digital media censorship, we've seen the browbeating of people in universities and in schools to have approved ways of thinking. We've seen efforts to establish controls in all kinds of spheres. But it's a whole different thing to go right to the Constitution, and in a place where the Constitution is not ambiguous. We're not talking about phrases like cruel and unusual punishment that clearly offer a certain interpretive latitude. We're talking about one of the most clear, unmistakable parts of the Constitution, the very first of the Bill of Rights. Now, I think that this woman, Marianne, although she's going kind of out front, she is saying out loud what a lot of leftists actually think. And what that means is that we're in grave danger as a society vis-a-vis our individual liberties, our civil liberties, because a lot of people in our elite classes don't believe in them. And these are the people that govern our institutions, not just governmental institutions, but educational institutions, institutions of media, and so on. So I think we're at a troubling place where these are people. By the way, one of the reasons they can speak so confidently about suppressing speech is they know that nobody's going to suppress their speech. They feel that their speech is secure. I'm sure this woman, Marianne Franks, has published a book. If someone came to her and said, well, you know what? you're right, free speech really is not a right. We're not going to let your book be published. We're going to block it. And she'd be like, what? So these are people who presume the very rights that they seek to take away from other people. And that shows at bottom that they don't believe in free speech, but neither do they believe in equal treatment under the law.